somehow we just got back together again. We were working together because we could work as a band.
Linda Ronstadt sold 100 million albums and dated some of the most powerful men in America. But in 2019, she revealed something heartbreaking. She couldn't even sing in the shower. This was the same woman who once used cocaine just to get through concerts and walked away from a future president because she had no talent for compromise. By 2024, she called Trump a rapist in a public letter. The real Linda Ronstadt was nothing like the legend. Linda Ronstadt was born on July 15, 1946, in Tucson, Arizona, into a family that had money, fame, and secrets most people never heard about. Her father, Gilbert Ronstadt, ran a successful machinery business called the F. Ronstadt Company. It made a fortune across the Southwest, and if you count the money in today's value, it would be worth millions. But behind that business success was a story that very few fans knew. Linda's great-grandfather, Friedrich August Ronstadt, came from Germany in the 1840s and married a Mexican woman named Margarita Redondo. On her mother's side, things were just as surprising. Her grandfather, Lloyd Groff Copeman, had nearly 700 patents. He invented the electric toaster and worked on the refrigerator and microwave. His inventions made the family a lot of money. They lived on a huge 10-acre ranch where Linda grew up with her siblings Peter, Michael, and Gretchen. It was a comfortable life, but it didn't stay that way forever. Her grandfather, Federico Jose Maria Ronstadt, had once run a giant business in Mexico, with offices in places like Nogales, Guaymas, Hermosillo, and Cananea. He sold hardware and supplies across the Arizona-Mexico border. But when the Mexican Revolution started in 1910, everything collapsed. Properties were taken, partners disappeared, and the business was wiped out. They lost millions. The family had to leave Mexico and start over in Tucson. That loss stuck with them for decades, and it shaped how they viewed their Mexican roots. So when Linda later chose to sing in Spanish and embrace her Mexican heritage, it wasn't just personal. It was something the family had quietly avoided for years. Linda started playing music early. When she was just 14 in 1960, she joined her brother and sister to form a small group called the New Union Ramblers. They played bluegrass, country, and Mexican folk songs at coffee shops and parties. But a talent scout from Capitol Records once told her to her face that her voice was too thin and not good enough to sell. That moment hit her hard. She could have quit then, but she didn't. Instead, she doubled down. They recorded some of their songs at a local studio. She sang at pizza places and clubs, getting paid barely $15 or $25 per night. At school, she kept getting in trouble. The nuns at St. Peter and Paul didn't like how she dressed or how openly she talked about boys. By 1964, when she was just 18, Linda made a decision that shocked her entire family. She dropped out of the University of Arizona after just one semester. Her parents had paid thousands for her education and expected her to live a quiet, proper life. When she told them she was moving to Los Angeles to chase music, it caused a storm. Her dad threatened to cut off her $200 monthly allowance. Her mom begged her to stay. Her brother Peter, who would later become the chief of police in Tucson, didn't speak to her for months. Gossip spread quickly in Tucson's social circles, and the Ronstadt name was suddenly tied to scandal. But Linda's decision was also tied to something else. She had fallen for Bob Kimmel, a 23-year-old folk musician who had moved to Tucson from Los Angeles. They met in 1963 when she was just 17. He was 6 years older and lived a very different lifestyle. Her parents saw him as a bad influence. When she visited him in LA during Easter break in 1964, she ended up staying. That relationship was the real beginning of her music journey, and it also tore her from the life her family had planned. Soon after moving, she and Kimmel started a band called the Stone Poneys with Kenny Edwards. But things got messy fast. In 1964, their manager told Kimmel, right in front of Linda, that he could get her a solo deal, but wasn't sure about the rest of the band. That moment broke the group's trust. Edwards left for a while, and some of his song credits were erased later when their albums were reissued. It was the first time Linda saw how cold and manipulative the music business could be. In 1967, Something even more surprising happened. She went into the studio to record a song called Different Drum. But when she got there, the producer had replaced her band with strangers and added full orchestra instruments without telling her. When the record came out, her name was barely visible on the cover. It said, Stone Poneys featuring Linda Ronstadt. It didn't feel like a group anymore. The song became a hit, reaching number 13 on Billboard. But Linda hated the sound. She hadn't wanted all the strings and shiny instruments. The song had originally been written by Mike Nesmith of the Monkees and rejected by his own band. Linda's version made her famous, but it also boxed her into a style she didn't want. Even with a hit song, her life in Los Angeles wasn't easy. In the late 1960s, she was broke. She lived in a rundown house near Venice Beach, surrounded by drugs and chaos. Her label had removed her band from the books after their second album, so she didn't get any royalties. She had to pay for their third album herself, which left her with massive debt. She often felt lost. One day, her car broke down while she was listening to Different Drum on the radio. She had a hit on the air, but no way to get home. She said later that not having a car in LA felt like death. In 1969, she released her first solo album called Hand Sewn, Homegrown, but it barely sold. Fewer than 10,000 copies. Her label didn't know where to place her. They said she was too country for rock and too rock for country. One of the singles only reached number 70, and that happened 2 years later. She was already $40,000 in debt. On top of that, she was struggling with stage fright. She didn't feel ready to stand alone without the songs written by Kimmel. She thought her voice wasn't enough. The rejection made her wonder if she'd made a mistake by dropping out of school. That same year, she toured with The Doors. Their manager forced her onto a broken-down DC-3 plane with Jim Morrison and others when their flight was grounded. She said the pilot looked more like a shady car dealer than someone who should fly a plane. It was a terrifying trip. Jim Morrison's drinking and behavior were hard to watch. He wore the same snakeskin pants every day and acted wild. Linda later said that The Doors could have been great if they just replaced him. The whole tour made her feel like she was caught in a world of madness. In early 1970, she started working on her second solo album called Silk Purse. It was recorded in Nashville and San Francisco. The sessions were tense. The producer, Elliot Mazer, was strict and demanding, but the album gave her one of her most important songs, Long, Long Time. That song reached number 25 on the Billboard chart and earned her first Grammy nomination in 1971, though she lost to Dionne Warwick. That album helped her step into country music in a serious way. In 1971, everything changed again. Linda and her manager hired 4 musicians to be her backup band. Their names were Glenn Frey, Don Henley, Randy Meisner, and Bernie Leadon. They only played one live concert with her that summer at Disneyland. But during the tour, Frey and Henley shared a room and started writing songs together. After it ended, they told Linda they wanted to form their own group. She introduced them to Leadon and helped with the audition. By September 1971, those 4 guys had formed the Eagles. In November 1974, Linda released Heart Like a Wheel, her biggest breakthrough. It hit number 1 on both the Billboard and country charts. The song You're No Good hit number 1 by February 1975. When Will I Be Loved reached number 2 on the pop chart and number 1 on the country chart. The album sold over 2 million copies and went double platinum. Her producer, Peter Asher, helped shape her sound. They worked together on 13 albums, and every one of them went gold or platinum. Their partnership became one of the most successful in music history. In 1975, she won her first Grammy for Best Country Vocal Performance. Her crossover style, mixing rock, country, and folk, changed the industry. Later in 1987, she released Canciones de mi Padre, an album in Spanish that honored her Mexican roots. It became the best-selling non-English album in U.S. history, with 2.5 million copies sold. In 1975, Linda Ronstadt released Prisoner in Disguise, and it sold more than 1 million copies. It climbed to number 4 on the Billboard 200 in September. On the surface, she looked like a huge success, but behind the scenes, Linda was falling apart. She had stage fright so bad, she started using cocaine just to make it through performances. She remembered the 1973 Neil Young tour where 15,000 fans didn't want to see her. They booed, they yelled, and she kept going. But to stay calm, she used so much cocaine that she had to get her nose cauterized twice. In her own words, "I don't put anything up my nose anymore, except occasionally my finger." Even with all of that, Prisoner in Disguise made her the first woman to earn 2 back-to-back platinum albums while hiding a serious drug problem. Then, in 1976, her version of When Will I Be Loved hit #2 on the Billboard Hot 100. But at the same time, she was damaging her voice from years of over-singing to fight off panic. She didn't know it then. She was already showing signs of a serious brain condition. Years later, she said her voice felt strange as early as 2000. She thought her recording equipment was broken, but it was actually the start of something she couldn't stop: progressive supranuclear palsy, which was misdiagnosed as Parkinson's for a long time. By 2009 in San Antonio, she could barely sing during her last performance. Her mariachi band had to carry most of the songs. The most heartbreaking part is that her biggest hits were made during the early days of the condition that would one day take away her voice completely. Her next album, Hasten Down the Wind, came out in August 1976 and sold over 1 million copies again. She became the first woman in music to hit that milestone 3 times in a row. She won a Grammy for it in 1977, but her success came with a cost. She and producer Peter Asher kept clashing over the sound. Linda wanted to move away from her usual country rock style and highlight new songwriters. Peter didn't agree. Their arguments nearly ended their partnership, even though they were still making hits. The album still reached #3 on the pop charts and even hit #1 on the country charts at the same time. That kind of success should have brought joy, but it only widened the gap between her and the people behind the scenes. In 1977, Simple Dreams came out and knocked Rumors by Fleetwood Mac off the #1 spot. It stayed there for 5 weeks, starting December 3rd. The album went triple platinum. Her single, Blue Bayou, sold more than 1 million copies and reached #3 on the Hot 100. But even then, Linda felt like she didn't belong. She was competing in a world full of men, and she felt invisible. She once said that people looked at her like she was just a girl in a pretty dress, not a serious artist. That album outsold even the Eagles, who used to be her backing band in 1971, but she still felt like she was stuck proving herself. In 1978, she became the first woman to headline major arena tours. The crowds were massive. The demand was overwhelming, and the drug use continued. She told Rolling Stone that year that she had tried just about every drug, even heroin once or twice. But she realized that cocaine made her nervous and forget the words on stage. So she stopped. She said, "If it impaired your ability to play, out you go." Her arena shows made her a rock legend, but her honesty about drugs shocked the industry. That same year, she released Living in the USA on September 19th. It reached #1 on November 4th and became her 3rd straight chart-topping album. It even went double platinum before it officially hit the shelves, just from pre-orders. But it wasn't smooth. She covered Elvis Costello's Allison, and many folk fans turned on her, calling her a sellout. Costello didn't care. He said he never listened to her version, but he liked the paycheck. Linda replied with a smile, "Send me more songs. Just keep thinking about the money." Even with controversy, her fans stayed loyal. In 1980, she made her Broadway debut in The Pirates of Penzance. The show was a hit and got her a Tony nomination. But backstage, she was a mess. She only had 6 lines in total, but she would panic so badly she couldn't perform. She missed shows due to sore throats that some people believed were caused by anxiety. She never liked acting. She said it wasn't something she ever wanted to do, but she did learn better vocal control during that time, working with voice coaches who gave her tools she never had in rock music. Then, in 1983, she made a risky move. She released What's New, an album full of 1930s jazz standards with arranger Nelson Riddle. No one expected it to work. Her label didn't even want her to do it. But the album came out on September 12th and stayed on the charts for 81 weeks. It hit #3 and sold over 3 million copies in the US. Only Thriller and Can't Slow Down were ahead of her. She proved everyone wrong and opened the door for other rock artists to explore jazz. In 1984, She followed up with Lush Life. It came out on November 16th. The production was a nightmare. She wanted every note perfect. The recording stretched from August 24th to October 5th and cost a lot, but it paid off. It earned 2 Grammy nominations and even won one for Best Instrumental Arrangement. Critics loved it, calling her versions of When I Fall in Love and Sophisticated Lady some of her best work. That made it her 10th platinum album. In 1987, she released Canciones de mi Padre, a Spanish-language album that became the best-selling non-English record in U.S. history. It sold 2.5 million copies in America and close to 10 million worldwide. But for her, it wasn't just about numbers. It was about reconnecting with her roots. She had grown up near the Mexican border and sang with her dad as a child, but she wasn't fluent in Spanish. She worked hard to learn the songs perfectly. She performed with 3 of the top mariachi bands in the world and said those were her happiest performances. That same year, after more than 10 years of delays, she finally recorded the trio album with Dolly Parton and Emmylou Harris. It came out in March and reached number 6 on the Billboard 200. It went platinum and sold more than 4 million copies. The song To Know Him Is to Love Him reached number 1 on the country charts. They won the 1988 Grammy for Best Country Performance by a duo or group. The 3 women finally found time to make it happen and didn't let anything stop them. In 1989, she teamed up with Aaron Neville for Don't Know Much. It became her last top 10 hit, reaching number 2 on the Billboard Hot 100 and number 1 on the Adult Contemporary chart. It sold over 900,000 copies in the US. The duet came from her album Cry Like a Rainstorm, Howl Like the Wind, which went triple platinum. They won the 1990 Grammy for Best Pop Performance by a duo. Critics loved it. People magazine said their voices blended like sunlight through stained glass. In 1991, she released Más Canciones on November 19th. It was a follow-up to her first Spanish-language album. She said she started dreaming in Spanish and couldn't get the songs out of her head. She recorded the vocals with her brothers Pete and Mike, using the same style they sang at home growing up. The album peaked at number 88 on the Billboard 200 and won her a Grammy in 1993. Between 1977 and 1978, Linda also had a secret relationship with Mick Jagger. They connected through music, and she sang Tumbling Dice live with the Rolling Stones on July 21st, 1978, in Tucson. Their chemistry was strong, but Jagger was married at the time, and it didn't last. Decades later, Linda shared that their personalities clashed, and it wasn't meant to be. In 1993, she released Winterlight on November 23rd. It was a shift toward a more layered, new age sound. She co-produced it herself, stepping away from Peter Asher. The title track appeared in the Secret Garden movie. It was praised for its creativity, but didn't sell well. Still, it showed her growth and artistic courage. She recorded songs by Brian Wilson, Carole King, and Burt Bacharach, showing her range. In 1995, she put out Feels Like Home. It reached number 75 on the Billboard chart and sold 188,815 copies. She earned gold certification, but record labels started pressuring her to change her image at age 49. They wanted her to be sexier. She refused. She stayed true to herself. That year, she returned to the country charts with the single Walk On. In 1999, she reunited with Emmylou Harris for Western Wall, the Tucson Sessions. It was originally planned back in 1994, but got delayed for 5 years due to issues with Dolly Parton's availability. The album explored deep emotions, regrets, and loss. It ran 50 minutes and 47 seconds. Critics said they stopped singing about youthful romance and started reflecting on real life. The album was heavy but meaningful. In 2004, she released her last solo studio album, Hummin' to Myself, on November 9th. It reached number 3 on the jazz chart and stayed there for 6 months. She included songs she once wanted to do with Nelson Riddle before he passed away. She worked with jazz stars like Roy Hargrove and Christian McBride. Her voice still sounded good, but she admitted it didn't feel the same. It peaked at number 166 on the Billboard chart and would be her last major project. In 2014, She was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, but she didn't attend. That's when fans learned just how sick she had become. She had been diagnosed with Parkinson's disease 8 months earlier. She told AARP she couldn't sing at all anymore. Her hands were shaking, and she was shocked by the diagnosis. She had already won 10 Grammys and sold over 100 million albums, but that night, her absence said everything. In the 2000s, her tours became rare. In 2009, she performed for the last time. She said she felt tired all the time and didn't understand why. She blamed shoulder surgery, nerve problems, and maybe a tick bite, but the truth was more serious. It was Parkinson's, or possibly something even rarer called PSP. She retired in 2011 and revealed her condition 2 years later. Looking back, she had likely been sick for nearly 8 years without knowing what was really happening. Linda Ronstadt never lived an ordinary life. From the very beginning of her rise in the 1970s, everything she did pulled people in. When she started dating California Governor Jerry Brown in 1971, the media couldn't get enough of them. She was a Grammy-winning singer in her early 30s, and he was a rising political star, 41 years old. In April 1979, they took a trip to Africa. It was supposed to be quiet, just 10 days across Liberia, Kenya, and a few more countries. But reporters who had been covering the Uganda war suddenly turned their cameras on them instead. Outside their hotel, crowds of journalists waited. Every time they went outside, flashes went off. At Nairobi Airport, Linda got overwhelmed and locked herself in the ladies' room. Jerry begged her, saying, "Come on, Linda, just one picture of us, and they'll have what they want." But she couldn't take it anymore. She ran straight to the plane with her head down. It was his 41st birthday, but no one was celebrating. Instead, headlines questioned whether Jerry would use state funds to save her Malibu home from flooding. A few years later, in 1983, she started dating George Lucas, the man behind Star Wars. It became her longest relationship, lasting until 1988. He was always working on movies, Star Wars, Indiana Jones, and she lived life on the road. At first, they kept things quiet, but over time, Linda realized she couldn't keep up with his work habits. She told people she had no talent for compromise. She needed freedom. George's world was structured. Hers wasn't. She later said he probably thought her musician lifestyle was too messy. They ended things peacefully. The truth was clear. Linda always chose her own path over settling down. That path surprised a lot of people in the 1990s. In 1990, at age 44, Linda adopted a baby girl named Mary Clementine. Then, in 1994, she adopted a boy named Carlos. She didn't have a husband, and she didn't care. Years earlier, she had told Playboy that she'd only have kids if she wanted them more than anything, and if that happened, marriage wouldn't matter. Some fans didn't like it. They expected something traditional, but Linda stayed true to herself. She raised them quietly in Tucson, away from the cameras. She taught Mary to sing in Spanish and laughed when Mary didn't even know her mom sang in English until she was 6. Carlos grew up to love guitar and later worked in tech. Now at 78, Linda says both of them are her joy. Carlos even lives just a mile away and still joins her for Sunday brunch with his girlfriend. She never married, not once, and she never regretted it. At 79, she said it clearly. Marriage wasn't for me anyway. She repeated what she'd said for decades. I have no talent for compromise. Even in 1974, during an interview with Crawdaddy, she said showbiz relationships don't last because everything around you keeps changing. She talked about dating John Boylan, Jerry Brown, George Lucas, Albert Brooks, even Jim Carrey for 8 months. Jim had asked her out after she offered him a spot opening for her tour. But no matter who it was, Linda stayed focused on herself and her music. She needed her space, and she took it. But not all surprises in her life were choices. In 2000, she noticed something strange. Her voice started cramping. It would freeze mid-song. She said it felt like yelling instead of singing. People didn't believe her. They said she was just being a perfectionist. But the feeling wouldn't go away. In 2009, she performed for the last time. She said she couldn't charge people anymore. I was just kind of yelling. She sold over 100 million albums, won 11 Grammys, but no doctor could explain what was wrong. For 13 years, she carried that confusion. Then, in January 2013, she was told she had Parkinson's. At first, the diagnosis gave her some answers, but the truth came out in 2019. It wasn't Parkinson's. It was something far worse: progressive supranuclear palsy, or PSP. It's a rare disease. Only about 15,000 to 20,000 people in the US have it. Parkinson's affects over 1 million. PSP attacks the brain differently. It destroys the small muscle movements needed for singing, even for basic things like swallowing. Parkinson's medication didn't help her. It actually made things worse. In an interview with Anderson Cooper, she explained how PSP was stealing her voice one tiny motion at a time. What broke people's hearts most was what she said later that year. In 2019, she admitted, "I can't even sing in the shower." That hit hard. Singing in the shower needs no training, no perfection, but she couldn't even hum a tune. She said songs still play in her head, bad ones, over and over. Sometimes Christmas carols she never liked. She called it torture. Then she lost her ability to knit. Then came trouble eating. She had to relearn how to swallow. She said her brain was falling behind, and she'd lose words mid-sentence. The woman whose voice once filled arenas could now barely speak. By 2020, she needed a wheelchair. PSP had attacked her balance. She kept falling. She lost her hearing, but she stayed fully aware. She called it a series of things being taken away from you. She could still think clearly. She just couldn't move like she used to. The woman once called the First Lady of Rock now needed help with almost everything. Still, she kept trying to adapt. She said it was hard, but she found new ways to keep going. In 2022, she published something new, a book called Feels Like Home. It wasn't about her illness. It was about her heritage. Mexican recipes, family stories, songs from the borderlands. She wrote it with Lawrence Downs. It became a bestseller and won the 2023 Southwest Book of the Year. The book wasn't sad. It was a celebration of where she came from, filled with family photos and traditional dishes. She said she still hears music in her mind, and now she finds joy in cooking and family. Then in January 2024, something huge happened. It was announced that Selena Gomez would play her in a new biopic directed by David O. Russell. The movie was based on Linda's 2013 memoir, Simple Dreams. She met with Selena at her home and helped her prepare for the role. Even though her voice was gone, she made sure the story would be told the right way. Around the same time, her song Long, Long Time was featured in The Last of Us on HBO, causing a 4,900% spike in streams. Her legacy was still alive and growing. That same year, Linda made news again. In September 2024, Trump planned a rally at the Linda Ronstadt Music Hall in Tucson. She wasn't having it. She wrote a public statement calling him a rapist and criticizing his immigration policies. She talked about migrant children being separated from their families. She even called out his running mate, J.D. Vance, asking if she was half a childless cat lady just because she adopted her kids. She ended the post by saying she wanted to keep the rapist out of the White House. She was 78 and sick, but she didn't hold back. Despite all the losses, she stayed generous. Her net worth in 2025 was around $130 to $135 million. That included $120 million from album royalties, $5.7 million in real estate, and another $10 million in investments. She made $1 to $2 million every year from music rights. But what touched people most was her donations. After her diagnosis, she gave heavily to Parkinson's research. Tribute concerts raised money for the Michael J. Fox Foundation. In her honor, a concert film titled The Music of Linda Ronstadt raised even more funds. Her 11 Grammys and Rock and Roll Hall of Fame spot from 2014 were permanent marks of her talent, but her fight to help others showed her heart.